Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving into a totally critical, high-stakes aviation maneuver, the forward slip to landing. We're going to break down the physics, the exact step-by-step control inputs, and of course, the absolutely crucial safety checks to pull this off perfectly. Let's get right into it.
So, picture this for a second. You're sitting in the cockpit. The runway is right there, straight ahead. But there's a serious problem. You are way too high on final approach. You're literally about to overshoot the runway. Maybe you misjudge the winds, or hey, maybe you just don't have enough power for a missed approach to go around. The ground is rushing up, the runway is just slipping right underneath you, and you need a fast, reliable fix to get down safely without speeding up past your landing speed. So what exactly do you do?
Well, that brings us to Section 1, defining the forward slip.
All right, so a forward slip is an intentional maneuver where you use cross controls to aggressively steepen your descent path. You're purposely dropping faster, but, and this is the real secret sauce here, you're doing it without gaining any extra airspeed. By cross-controlling, you're literally angling the airplane's fuselage away from your actual flight path. You're basically turning the entire body of the airplane into one giant air brake to create massive form drag. It drops you out of the sky quickly, safely, and puts you right back on that perfect approach glide path. Now, before you just go throwing the plane into a slip, there are a few absolutely crucial pre-slip safety checks we need to hit. First off, make sure your engine temperature and pressure are looking totally normal. Second, you got to ensure you have enough altitude to actually perform this and recover safely. You definitely do not want to be trying this for the first time just a few feet off the tarmac. Third, set your flaps as desired, and we'll actually touch on that more in just a second. And finally, pull that throttle all the way back to idle. We want gravity and drag doing all the heavy lifting here, not your engine.
And speaking of flaps, there's a really interesting specific warning from Cessna. They state that slips should actually be avoided with flap settings greater than 20 degrees. Why? Well, it's due to a slight tendency for the elevator to oscillate, kind of flutter, under certain combinations of airspeed, side slip angle, and your center of gravity loading. The big takeaway here? Knowing your specific aircraft's aerodynamic limits is just as important as knowing how to fly the maneuver itself. Always, always check your pilot's operating handbook.
Moving right along to Section 2, step-by-step execution. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty of how you actually make this happen. To start the slip, you need to execute 3 steps all at the exact same time. First, you put in some aileron input to lower one of your wings. Right as you do that, step 2, apply full rudder in the completely opposite direction to hold your heading. In step 3, apply forward pressure on the control column to push the nose down. You are literally fighting the airplane's natural aerodynamics here. You're banking one way and pushing the nose the opposite way. This cross-controlled state is exactly what twists the fuselage into the wind and creates all that drag we talked about.
And here's a really quick, essential rule of thumb to keep in your back pocket. If you happen to have a crosswind on final approach, always bank into the wind. Drop that upwind wing. This makes sure the wind pushes against the bottom of your lowered wing rather than getting caught underneath a raised wing and trying to flip you over. It'll keep your whole flight path so much more stable on the way down. Which leads us nicely into Section 3, controlling pitch and bank.
Okay, so you're in the slip. Now you need to cleanly separate 2 different flight dynamics in your head. It is absolutely crucial. While you're in a forward slip, your pitch, which you're controlling with the elevator, strictly dictates your airspeed. Meanwhile, your bank angle, controlled by your ailerons, dictates your track over the ground and how fast you're descending. The steeper your bank, the faster you're going to drop. And you just maintain your heading against that bank using opposite rudder pressure. If you can firmly separate these controls in your mind, you're going to completely master this maneuver.
Now, to stay perfectly lined up with that runway center line, you have to actively manage your drift. Remember, you're slipping, but the wind is still trying to push you around. It's actually pretty straightforward. If you look outside and see you're drifting upwind to the center line, simply reduce your bank a little bit. On the flip side, if you're drifting downwind, getting blown away from the center line, you just increase your bank angle. You're constantly making these tiny little micro adjustments with your bank and rudder to aggressively hold that track right down the pipe.
And because you're in this super high drag setup, it's vital to keep the nose of the aircraft lower than you normally would, just so you don't get too slow and risk a stall. As a general rule, the more bank you have dialed in, the lower that nose needs to be. Getting a bit too slow? Just apply some forward pressure, drop the nose, and get that speed back. Coming in too hot? Raise the nose gradually until things stabilize. Oh, and one huge thing to note, you might actually see some weird errors on your airspeed indicator. This is just because of the angle the pitot tube is hitting the wind during a slip, so be totally prepared to fly by feel and visual references just as much as your dials.
Keeping with that exact idea of flying by feel, remember that as your airspeed fluctuates during the slip, the actual feel and effectiveness of your flight controls will change dynamically. When you're moving faster, those controls are going to feel super tight and really responsive. But as you bleed off that speed and slow down, they're going to feel kind of mushy, meaning you'll need much larger physical inputs to get the exact same response. You've really got to stay on your toes and stay adaptable in the cockpit.
All right, let's wrap this up with Section 4, Recovery and Landing.
In aviation, timing is everything, right? You absolutely must discontinue the slip before you start your round out, that transition phase right before the flare. To recover, it's a smooth, simple sequence. Just level your wings using the ailerons, smoothly ease off that heavy opposite rudder pressure, and get right back into perfectly coordinated flight. Finally, shift your focus back to the elevator so you can maintain your proper approach speed and nail your standard landing procedure.
But hold on a second, there is one absolutely crucial exception for crosswinds. If you're landing in a crosswind, whatever you do, do not take all of your rudder and bank out when you recover from the forward slip. Think about it, if you neutralize everything, that crosswind is going to instantly blow you right off the center line at the worst possible moment. Instead, you want to leave just enough wing down and opposite rudder to seamlessly transition right into a side slip, which, as we know, is the standard technique for a crosswind landing. Keep that upwind wheel pointed squarely at the runway.
There's also one final physical reality you really need to brace yourself for. When you finally kick out of that forward slip, you are instantly removing that giant air brake effect we talked about. The drag falls away incredibly fast. And because of this sudden aerodynamic shift, the plane is going to have a very strong tendency to just float during the flare as ground effect takes over. Don't let it catch you off guard, or you're going to balloon right back up into the air. Just be ready to hold it off and let that speed bleed away naturally over the runway.
Which leaves us with this final thought. You now know the underlying mechanics of the forward slip. You know how to cross control, how to manage your pitch and bank totally independently, and exactly how to save an approach when you find yourself way too high. But putting all of that theory into practice, well, that's where the real skill lies. So you've mastered the slip to save your approach, but how exactly will you handle that sudden float, perfectly transitioning into a side slip during your next really tricky crosswind flare? It's something to think about. Thanks for joining this explainer and happy flying.